Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Panther Pourri. Jacob Langston can't be here tonight. He is off doing whatever he does now that he is single, but it's just TJ and I tonight. And I've got bad news for you guys. The Panthers still don't know how to win a 2-1 game. They're 3-0 since the last time we've talked, 8-0, but it seems only things people want to talk about is how the Panthers can't live coming from behind in the playoffs. But hey, they've won 8 in a row. They've came from behind again last Friday night against the Buffalo Sabres, down 3-1 early, won that game 4-3. Ripped Buffalo's heart out with about 30 seconds left in the game because, there are Buffalo fans who really wanted to win that game for some reason. Another strong effort on the second night of a back-to-back in Nashville. Spencer Knight gets a win there, even though he had a couple of gaffes playing the puck that could have turned that game. But the Panthers won 4-1. Almost had that elusive 2-1 win that everyone wants them to see, but those empty net goals. And then yesterday you had another quote unquote come from behind win against the Ducks where the Panthers were almost exposed, but shockingly enough, 55. John Gibson was not able to come up with 55 saves. He only came up with 52, I believe. And therefore the Panthers won again, 8 in a row. TJ, how you feeling?
I'm honestly not even, we kind of alluded to this before the podcast. My mind is like on other things. My head is turned. I've sort of come around to the idea that, yes, the Panthers are going to be first place in the Atlantic Division. Now, this time next week, we could be talking about a 3-game Carolina winning streak or Leafs winning streak and a 3-game Panthers losing streak, and then things would be looking different. But I think that's highly unlikely. So, what we're seeing from them down the stretch, it's great. It's everything that you would want. The question is really just like, how much does the end of the regular season matter? And I don't know, that's still kind of up in the air, but as much as it does matter, they're doing everything that you would want. I mean, the Buffalo game, they go behind because Buffalo's got fresher legs. They had just played last night, and people seem to think that always means that, throughout the whole 60 minutes, that will benefit the rest of the team. It tends to benefit the team that played the night before in the first 10 or 15 minutes of the game. That's when Buffalo jumped out to their lead. So I think that that's understandable that Buffalo would be the better team at that point. And also, a lot of this comes down to goaltending. This game and the Anaheim game, John Gibson just stood on his head. I know that that's the cliche, but it was really true in this game. Every time you looked up, the puck was coming at him and he was repelling it or he was catching it in his glove. It was exceptional stuff from John Gibson, and a couple of goals that maybe Bob should have saved, could have saved, kept that Sabres game from being a little bit more in hand than it turned out being. And the Nashville game, I feel like we should give a particular credit to their performance, because that was the kind of game that people had always asked, oh, can the Panthers win that type of tight checking, very low event hockey game? Well, it turns out that a game that isn't stretched, that isn't going from end to end super quickly, is still a game that they can play, as long as their attendee is making saves that they should make pretty much every time. I mean, Spencer Knight did make a couple of very nice saves, maybe a couple that you would have forgiven him for letting in. But overall, they gave up very little to the Predators. They were deserving winners. And that was, a road game, second night of a back-to-back, playing against a playoff team as things stand. You got to be very happy with the way they looked in that game.
Yeah, and that was a day afternoon back-to-back. They played, well, not afternoon. It was a 6:00 start.
Yeah, 5 p.m. local time, of course.
5 p.m. local time, right. But they played 7 o'clock, got on a plane to Nashville. It's not a long flight, but then played, essentially 6 o'clock, South Florida time, and played well. I do want to mention one thing about the Buffalo game. I don't really blame Bob for any goal other than the Skinner goal. And even that one, that's not the easiest save to make when you got a cutting in short side and tight like that. But the first goal on the power play, cross ice pass, quick shot, that's a goal. Yes, you want to see your $10 million goalie make that save, but it's not a goal you look back and say, really, Bob, that's a goal you give up? Whatever. The second goal, the Pesic goal, Weegar, I don't know what Weegar was trying to do, trying to block a shot with his knee. That's a play that should never happen from Weegar. You got to know better. For a guy who's an extremely high IQ hockey player, that was a low IQ play, so I don't blame Bob. The third goal, Bob, I guess, had a bad turnover with the puck on his stick and then didn't play it perfectly, but those aren't the best saves to make. I don't really have an issue with how Bob played against Buffalo. The issue the Panthers have had, the last two Bob starts. Not, I'm not trying to talk about the past games where Bob was pulled and he wasn't great. Opposing goalies have just outplayed the Panthers goalie, but it's not because Bob was bad. It's because the other team's goalie was really damn good. Like John Gibson put on maybe the best performance a goalie has played against the Panthers this year in a losing effort. And who was in net again for Buffalo on Friday?
Was it
Tarkovsky? No.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like. I can't remember what it is exactly.
Something like that. Yeah. It's a journeyman vet, like, who had a solid game. He made a lot of good saves, and then he couldn't make that one at the end, which, that's what people still don't understand about the Panthers offense is they are not trading chances all night. They are attacking you all night. They are wearing you down. And by the third period, the Panthers still have legs because they've been rolling 4 lines, and they're just overwhelming you. Like, I'm curious what the Panthers XG percentage is in the third period of games they're losing. Like, it's got to be absolutely absurd because they just keep the pressure on. They did it against Buffalo. They did it against Anaheim. I mean, Anaheim, that was just an onslaught the whole game. And it was, in the third period when the Panthers were looking for that tying goal, they just never stopped.
Mm-hmm. And Anaheim does tend to be in those kind of games where they're relying on their goaltender, and most of the time it doesn't work out. Like, you can't win a lot of hockey games in this league like that unless your goaltender is Igor Shesterkin. And even then, sometimes you still don't get so lucky. But that was something that they, like you said, they can break through it because Huberdeau, Barkov, when it's crunch time, when they can play those guys with the 6-on-5, 6-on-4, sometimes if you get a power play, they're not tired like, some of the other top guys in the leagues are, because they didn't have to play 30 minutes that night. They can play 20 because you can put out a Lundell, Reinhart, Marchment line and they'll score. And you can put out a Huberdeau, Duclair, Bennett line, or Bennett and Giroux line, and they'll score. Even the fourth line can often chip in with a goal here or there. We've seen E2 score some goals. We've seen Lomberg's got 9 goals this year. And that's something I never thought I'd be saying, that he could be hitting double figures very soon. It's something that can wear your team down. I mean, the Blue Liners are chipping in with some goals this year. I mean, did you know that Gustav Forsling is apparently tied for first or second in 3-on-3 goals this year by defensemen?
I didn't know that. It doesn't surprise me because he's had a few. I don't put much stock into that stat.
I just think it's fun.
It's a fun one, but I think you also said Huberdeau has the most 3-on-3 points this year. It goes back to that same analogy I've used in the past from the movie Little Big League, when the announcer's like, oh, he's batting 297 on Wednesdays that are leap years. So he's got that going for him. It's like, it's such an obscure stat with such a small sample size. It's not relevant. Like, never mind the fact that it's 3-on-3 and there's going to be a total of 0 3-on-3 opportunities in the NHL postseason. So it's a cool stat, but it means very little. One thing I want to touch on is there anything else you want to say in general about these 3 games before we move on? But I think we kind of covered it all.
I just wanted to say that I thought Sherratt played his 2 best games as a Panther the last 2. Like, he
Agreed.
had 2 solid games, and especially that Nashville game, once you get into that tight checking, very little back and forth, because there were bad moments in that game for him, but it was coming when there was a blown zone exit or something like that, where there was a bad change and he didn't acquit himself to it well. But overall, once it was in the regular flow of entries are hard to come by, everything's hard to come by once you're in the offensive zone. He made it very difficult for the Nashville attacking players.
I agree, but Ben Sherratt's probably 2 best games as a Panther. I still don't think he was worth what we gave up.
Yeah, no, but at this point, that's a sunk cost.
At least we're seeing, we're seeing better results, and that's all you can ask for. I want to touch on it real quick because Pierre LeBrun mentioned it on the Insiders yesterday, I believe, that the Panthers are willing to turn to Spencer Knight in the playoffs if Bob's inconsistencies continue. I don't think anyone should be surprised by that.
I'm certainly
Knight started the year off terribly. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He was one of the 5 worst goalies in the league by expected goals saved above expected. And He got sent down to the minors, had that stint down there, came back, and he's been the Spencer Knight that we saw last year, and he's been very good. And Bob has been inconsistent. I think I'd be shocked if game one of the playoffs is not Sergei Bobrovsky in net. But just like last year when Q had a quick hook and went to Drieger and then eventually went to Knight, I think Burnett's going to have the same quick hook with Bob. If the Panthers are down, 2-0 and Bob's had, 2 mediocre games, or hell, even if Bob has a mediocre game one, I could see him turning to a mediocre game one and the Panthers lose. Let me say it that way. Panthers have a mediocre game one and lose. I could see him turning to Spencer Knight. Shouldn't surprise anyone. Spencer Knight's been really good. He's looking like the prospect they drafted, who's one of the top 3, young goalies in the NHL. So why is anyone surprised by this?
I think we've talked about this for years and years and years. There's no objective way to project, evaluate, whatever word you want to use, goaltending. It's just a fool's errand. And thus, I could not tell you what Andrew Brunette or anybody else that would be involved in that decision-making process is likely going to look at to make that decision. Would I be surprised if Spencer Knight started game one? I honestly wouldn't, but I'm going to say that I do think there's a strong chance, like maybe 80 to 85% chance that Bob is going to start that game. I think it would take either Bob playing horribly down the stretch or Knight playing lights out amazing down the stretch for that to change, but I could see either one of those things happening.
I'm going to disagree with you and simply say, unless Bob is injured, he's getting game one. Even if he's bad down the stretch, you give your $10 million goalie game one, especially because even if he is mediocre, and I know we're going to get into it soon because we all thought it was going to be the Washington Capitals, but that looks like it could possibly change. But even if he is mediocre in game one, unless he's brutal and gives up like 5 goals on 25 shots, Panthers still have a really good shot to win. Because despite what people are saying, offense goes down in the playoffs, like this team is a 5-on-5 wagon. And I would be shocked if they're putting up less than 4 goals a game in round one.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Like, they're probably not even giving it their 100% effort right now. And once the playoffs come around, you've got 3 lines that can come at you with the 100% effort, and they're all really dangerous offensively, and 2 of them are good defensively. But beyond that, that's just a problem for teams that go into the postseason and they're like, all right, here's our strategy. We're going to win because we're going to shorten our bench defensively, and our top 4 is going to play against the other team's top 6 all the time. And we're going to make sure we never get our third pairing out there against them. Well, what are you going to do about the Panthers, Reinhart, Lundell, Marchment line? Like, you can't play your top 4 60 minutes a night.
Yeah. And it's please match up your first line against the Panthers' fourth line. They're solid defensively. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, let's use the Washington Capitals. Yeah, do you really want Lundell up against the OV line? No, but that's fine. That means the Capitals have to use lines 2 through 4 against the best top 9 in the NHL. Good luck. You don't think Barkov's going to eat going up against another opposing team's second line? You don't think Huberdeau's eating going against the other team's third line? You don't think Reinhardt's eating going up against the opponent's fourth line? Like, please match up your first line against the Panthers' fourth. I'll take that slight negative that they're going to end up being and live off the overwhelming positive of the other matchups you now get.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. So why don't we just go ahead and full on pivot to the playoff, what we're looking at. And a lot of the season, it's been like, where are the Panthers going to finish? And now we feel pretty confident. They have a projected 7-point gap right now on Carolina. That's not to say that it's actually 7 points in the standings, but according to Wrestling Heel in the Panthers Twitter community, Dom Luszczyzn, that's where they're projected to finish ahead of Carolina, 7 points. So Carolina's got to make up that gap in the projection somehow in order to shake this up. On the other end, we thought that the Washington Capitals were going to be the team that the Panthers would face as the 8th seed, quote unquote. And now it's looking less and less certain. According to Dom's model, we're looking at the Capitals having about a 47% chance of being the Panthers' first round opponent, down from, I think it was like 85% the last time that he put out that I saw it. And the Pittsburgh Penguins have risen all the way up to 40%. And they are going to be without Evgeny Malkin for the next 3 games after he cross-checked Mark Borowiecki in the face, which was just a stupid move. I don't think we really need to go further than that. So things are trending downward for the Pittsburgh Penguins very quickly. And rounding out the most likely opponents for the Panthers, the Bruins have come in at 9%. And I've long contended I don't want any part of that. So good thing it's below 10%. I don't want any part of the Bruins, but they do have a number of injuries on the back end right now. So I guess if they end up being the 8th seed, maybe those guys won't be able to come back for the first round. So it'll end up being kind of a good thing. Who's to say? Like, we can't really sit here and say, well, here's why Hampus Lindholm and Mike Riley and whoever else is going to be back for round 1, because that's not something we can really give opinions on. But, beyond that, I still, even though they're trending in opposite directions, feel strongly that the Panthers have the best chance against Washington. So I'm still rooting hard for that to be the first round matchup. What do you think, Alex?
I mean, I'm in agreement with you. Washington, you really only got to worry about that top line of Ovi. Like, if you can limit the Ovi line and obviously not give up a bunch of power play situations, you're feeling really good about ending that series quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if Ovi is putting up 2 points a game, that series can easily go 7, and you're clenching your ass cheeks the entire way. However, give me having to worry about Ovi, then having to worry about Crosby, having to worry about Malkin, having to worry about Gensel, having to worry about Letang. I mean, Jari has kind of fallen back to the pack a bit after an amazing first 2/3 of the season, but Penguins are sputtering right now. They're 3-6-1 in their last 10. It's kind of what do you want the team that has less talent, or do you want the team that's sputtering their way to the finish? And honestly, considering the Capitals are only 6-4 in their last 10, they're not playing that great. Give me the Capitals still.
Yeah, give me the Capitals. I think that we learned last year from the end of the season where Tampa got bushwhacked by the Panthers twice in a row, that how you end the season on form only goes so far. And you still want to bet on the top to bottom roster talent and how that projects. And looking at how a team is played over the full season is a good way to project that. Tampa's an outlier because they didn't have Nikita Kucherov. So you can't necessarily project how a Tampa team with Nikita Kucherov would have performed with the roster they had in the regular season last year. And I think that if we're looking at the regular season this year, where Washington has had a couple of significant injuries, but there's been nothing like a franchise player missing the entire season like Tampa Bay had last year. Ovi's played pretty much every game. Kuznetsov played pretty much every game. Carlson's played pretty much every game, as far as I know. I might be wrong about the latter two. Backstrom missed like the first 25 games or something like that. But, Nick Backstrom's getting up there. He's not, aging as gracefully as Ovi is. Ovi is obviously having a great year. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, no matter how gauche it sounds, I think the Capitals are really just the traveling Ovechkin, catching Gretzky tour right now. And that's their goal as a franchise, to get Ovi to the NHL goals record. And Stanley Cups aren't really as much of a concern for them as they used to be because they got him one. So the last 3 seasons, they've gone out in the first round. They've won a combined total of 5 playoff games. I'm not really that scared of them in the playoffs.
Yeah, just to check your work, you're spot on about the big 5 in terms of Washington. Ovi looks like he's played every game. Kuznetsov missed a game. Carlson's missed a couple. Wilson's missed a couple. Backstrom has only played 39 games this year. TJ Oshie's only played 35. Anthony Mantha's only played 28. And that's, so Washington's has had some injury issues, but their best players have been available all season. So that it's a solid team. It's a playoff caliber team.
Yes.
But you're right. This is the get Ovi to the Gretzky record tour and, surround him with the players he wants to be around, despite the fact that they're aging. Give me the Capitals round 1. Penguins, is there anything else we really want to talk about them, or did I cover it all?
Pretty much. I mean, they got Raquel at the deadline. I feel like that makes them even a little bit better. Even just the last thing in terms of the Capitals, this really isn't to say, and you kind of alluded to it. They're just the worst of a very strong bunch. Like you got to play somebody. It's not like we can say, I want to play Columbus because Columbus isn't going to make the playoffs. It's not like I can say, I want to play Detroit. Detroit's not going to make the playoffs. It's only 8 teams. It has to be one of the 8.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the East is extremely top heavy and solid. I mean, it's amazing at the top, and then 7 and 8, it's like, okay, they're good. But like, if you look at the 7 and 8 in terms of points, 6, 7, and 8 in the West, it's like the Los Angeles Kings, Nashville Predators, and Dallas Stars. Like, I'd much rather any of those opponents over Washington or Pittsburgh. It's just unfortunate geographies against the Panthers. And that's what, they're going to have to face in the first round. It is what it is.
Totally. Couldn't say it any better.
I did want to touch on real quick because they're kind of been the darling of the post deadline. The Rangers, their advanced stats were bottom 5 pretty much across the board most of the season. They make a lot of low risk depth moves at the deadline. As we all know, former Florida Panther Frank Vatrano was traded there for a 4th round pick, and they've all worked. The Rangers have gone from a bottom 5 analytics team to a top 5. They're like, since the deadline, they're like top 5 in pretty much every stat. I'm trying to get to the tweet now so I can say it exactly. Okay, yeah, they're third. They went from 19th best to 3rd best in terms of time spent defending their zone. They give up the least amount of slot passes against, least amount of slot shots against, least amount of cycle chances against, and they're 5th best in expected goals against post deadline. Those are some pretty impressive numbers. But, and there's a big old but, they shut out the Flyers 4-0. So now I think they're like 10-4 since the deadline, or maybe even a little bit better. Maybe they're 11-3.
Wow.
Something like that. They've been really good post deadline. But here's who their opponents have been: New Jersey Devils, Pittsburgh Penguins, Buffalo Sabres, Pittsburgh Penguins, Detroit Red Wings, New York Islanders, Philadelphia Flyers, New Jersey Devils, Pittsburgh Penguins, Ottawa Senators, Carolina Hurricanes, and again, the Philadelphia Flyers. They lost to the Carolina Hurricanes, even though they actually led the expected goal share. And then I believe they're 2-1 against Pittsburgh, who, as we said, has been sputtering over since the deadline. That's not a murderer's row. That's a really soft schedule. So part of me is like, okay, yeah, great job, Drury. You made some good moves at the deadline. You shored up that, because that team was really top heavy and really bad in the bottom 6. They're a lot better now, but I'm also like red light screaming, like fool's gold. Like, sorry, adding Frank Vatrano as your highlight of the deadline, or I guess you want to call it Tyler Mott, is a highlight of your deadline.
I think he's out for the season. I think Tyler Mott's done.
Okay, but you get my point. Like,
yeah,
Frank Vatrano was your big deadline move. That does not take you from a bottom 5 analytics team to a top 5 analytics team. They've obviously gotten better, but there's a lot of fools. But and they've also had a bunch of home games. So I'm not buying on the New York Rangers. I mean, Panthers won't have to see them until the conference finals if they make it. But to me, that team is still going to go as far as Igor Shesterkin takes them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we talked about it at the time. They really did all they needed to do at the deadline. You don't need to go out and get a top line winger. You have Panarin. You don't have to get a top pairing defenseman. You have Adam Fox. You don't have to get an elite goalie. You have Igor Shesterkin. What you do need to get is an entire bottom 6 and bottom pairing, because your depth is horrible. And that's what they did. They went out and got Justin Braun, Frank Vatrano, Tyler Mott. You got Andrew Kopp. These aren't players that move the needle necessarily, but put them in over the likes of a Dryden Hunt, or some guys I've never even heard of, and that improves things pretty significantly. You're just not getting killed in the bottom 6, and now you got a puncher's chance. It's the NHL playoffs, like we've always say. It's a league where the Montreal Canadiens can make the finals one year, and the next year they're the worst team in the league. And they did lose some key players in that time. There's no doubt about it. But I think that I wouldn't count them out. But at the same time, like, if there's a chance that the Panthers could play them in the conference finals, I'm certainly not complaining about that. I'd rather see them than Carolina, than Pittsburgh, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be, cocky Panthers fan or whatever, but it's like you took a guy that couldn't even get into the Panthers lineup, period, and put him in your top 6, and you want to say you're now a top team in the Eastern Conference? Sorry.
That sounds a little bit like Carter Verhaeghe. I don't think that's the same though.
No, it's not at all, because Carter Verhaeghe actually went out and gave you a full season's worth of top line production. Frank Fratano's been Frank Fratano. He'll get, super hot right away, and then he'll cool off. He's a streaky player. He's a good player, but he's a streaky player. Right now, he's on a hot streak. I don't see it happening for an entire playoff run.
So I was looking into the stats in the last month because I wanted to see what it was saying, like you were saying about the Rangers, and I found this amazing. So the Panthers have played 15 games in the last month. They're 12-2-1, and they have the third worst PDO in the league at 980. That's insane.
Yeah.
They're scoring at 5-on-5. They've scored almost 10 fewer goals than expected, and they're 12-2-1. That gesture that you just made won't translate onto the podcast, but he basically just said, ta-da, essentially. Yeah.
Though if you listen to Reese Jessup, PDO is overrated, and I'm starting to agree with him because I'm sure the Panthers PDO is pretty high, and yeah.
Yeah, it is over the course of the season, but I think that disparity between the expected goals and the actual goals is fine to point out. PDO is overrated, I agree. But it's a nice shorthand, If I wanted to get you the expected goals, minus goals differential for every team in the league, that would take some manual labor.
Yeah, no, I agree. PDO is a good quick stat to use. I'm just saying, when you've got Igor Shesterkin and it's like, he's putting up ungodly numbers and your team shoots at league average, you're still going to have a way positive PDO. But it's like, well, yeah, you've got the best goalie in the world who's been on fire the entire year. Like, that's not regressing.
Yeah, I agree. One more thing before we wrap this up, because there isn't a whole lot else to talk about. We're really just winding towards the playoffs, thinking about what we're going to be doing in the playoffs content-wise. I'm curious, do you want the Panthers to win the President's Trophy?
I don't care. I know that people talk about there being a curse about it, but I still think it's like 25% of the President's Trophy winners end up going on to win the Cup, which is still higher than the other 15 teams in the NHL. So right. I'm a goalie, so obviously I'm superstitious, but that's just one I don't believe in. And let's be honest, being able to, I would not put a banner up if you win the President's Cup, just because that the banners are for division titles when you don't win them a lot, and conference championships when you don't win them a lot, and the Stanley Cup. But President's Trophy, where it's it just doesn't really mean anything. It's there's no other league in professional sports that gives non-soccer league in professional sports that gives an award to the team to the best record. So it's cool if Panthers win it, great. It's something they can celebrate. And, next year it's you can put a little graphic up at the first game of the season, says, hey, we won the President's Cup. Obviously we hope it's a Stanley Cup banner raising ceremony, but it's still something that this organization can build on and say, hey, yeah, we went from, in 2 years after Bill Zito, we went from out of the playoffs to the number one regular season team in the NHL. And that is something to be proud of.
Yeah, I can see it both ways. Cause like you said, the curse is sort of overrated, but at the same time, there's a chance that they win the President's Trophy, don't end up winning the Cup. And for some reason, I just get the sense that would be more disappointing even than not winning as the number 2 team.
I disagree. It's going to be degrees. Look, if the Panthers are out in the first round, which I find highly unlikely, it's going to be regardless of whether they win the President's Cup or don't, it's going to be the same level of disappointment as Tampa fans had when they went in the first round 3 years ago. This team cannot go out in the first round. We've struggled so much, dealt with so much shit, gotten shit on by every other fan base so many times. To finally have this team and go out in the first round would be devastating. Second round exit to me would be disappointing because this team is a Cup caliber team, but there's going to be enough people who are hey, yeah, we haven't won a round since 96. I'll take it. But yeah, that's to me is going to be the determining factors of how disappointed I am and how devastated I am is where this team goes out, assuming they don't win the Cup. Whether or not they were the President's Trophy when that happened is not going to change anything for me because we know this is a top 3 team in the NHL, regardless of whether or not they get the most points.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see some nice gains in the market. And I know that people kind of already expect them because of how good they are in the regular season. But, if we start whipping up the South Florida media because they're in the conference finals, and, we're starting to see all of the national media land in Sunrise as well, I think that's something that is going to get a lot more eyeballs in the market on the team. That's what happened in Nashville when they went to the finals, and now all of a sudden they're selling out like every game. It certainly happened in Tampa because they have this long sellout streak. And I think it could happen with the Panthers as well.
It's already happening. I mean, look at that game last night. It wasn't packed, but Anaheim is usually one of the worst draws of the season. Like there's, 6,000-7,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Tuesday night against Anaheim is usually like, hey, this is going to be one of our bottom 3 attended games of the season. It's going to be, 6,000-7,000 people because there's 0 Anaheim fans here. And no one goes because they enjoyed Mighty Ducks as a kid. Like no one's going to that game. I mean, I remember the 4-goal comeback game 4 years ago, and there was no one in the stands to enjoy that. Like there was no one there. So they're getting good crowds for these teams that don't draw. I mean, they're not sellouts yet, but the fans are coming. You go on a cup run and make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, you're going to see a lot of sellouts next year.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And that pretty much does it for the podcast. One last thing that I do want to mention. We're giving away a pair of tickets to the Jets game on Friday night, tomorrow night, if you're listening to this on Thursday. Lower bowl seats. I just got them from I just got the tickets, and I can't confirm they are in a row that begins with the number 1. So we're talking about lower 19 rows of the lower bowl. That's pretty damn good tickets. And, we're not in a place where this team is just going to give away seats like this anymore. So, you would have to pay like 100, maybe even more to get a pair of tickets like this. And we're giving them away for free. So just check out our Twitter account and see how you can win those tickets.
And if you're thinking about reselling them, guess what? We're sending you screenshots so you can't put them on StubHub. You're going to the game.
I'm going to send them at 6:50 p.m. So, good luck. You got to send me a selfie in front of FLA Live Arena before I send the tickets. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Panther Pourri. Alex, have you thought of a place that the people can rate us 5 stars? Rate us 5 stars on Netflix.
Or rate us 5 stars on ashleymadison.com.
There you go. So rate us 5 stars on Ashley Madison and Netflix after you enter to win those 2 tickets to tomorrow night's game. Hopefully you'll be there to cheer on the Cats, and we'll close out this Eastern Conference regular season championship and then throw up a cringy banner and make bad memes about it like Nashville. Anyway, until that happens, we'll talk to you later. Take care,
Good night,
everybody.